you so much for joining us again for another episode of American Mood Swings podcast, where we talk about the brain and all things mental health. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about substance abuse, addiction, healing, recovery, and we have a special guest, Kristen Johnson. She is the reentry coordinator for Graham County Substance Abuse Coalition in Arizona. We connected on
Yes.
LinkedIn, and I was really impressed with her post and her story. So we're going to talk all about her story and journey and healing, and now her advocacy work and working as a reentry coordinator, because I don't know a lot about what they do. So I just
Mhm.
this morning on LinkedIn, I saw something that Yale started a prison education initiative, and they graduated their first
Mhm.
class, I think, recently, and it was beautiful. Like
Oh, wow.
I
Yes.
just saw it this morning, but I have been really happy to see more education and training kind of programs in
Right.
jail. But they're very controversial. Whenever somebody tries to do it, there's always people that don't believe in it.
Mhm.
But I 100%, because I don't want anybody to come out and not be able, if you have no job skills, what are you supposed to do to do? So
Right. For sure.
all right, so thank you so much, Kristen. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story and your background?
So I was born here in Stafford. It's a small town. And my parents, I grew up in a really good household. My dad was a school administrator. My mom always stayed home with us. I had three brothers, two sisters. I was kind of right in the middle. And I just was always like, I had a great childhood. My parents always found a way if I wanted to play the piano, I wanted to take dance lessons, I played the guitar, I played the violin. And I know my parents really didn't have the money at this point because my dad was a school teacher, but they figured it out. I remember my dad chopping wood. And um, so I had a good childhood. I always say my trauma always came later, and most of my trauma was like self-inflicted. But now thinking back, when I was in third grade, my best friend was killed in a car wreck. My whole life, I have just lost a lot of people. A couple of years later, I lost another classmate. And I think looking back, all of that, plus the death later on in my life, took a toll on me, and I just wasn't aware of it. So I was really good at sports, made straight A's, overachiever. I just always had a lot of energy. Still do, still do.
Okay.
So a lot of energy. Got in high school, played sports, made really good grades. I was just always, I didn't party in high school, but I was still just always a little bit wild. I was a pom pom and I played sports. But when I got out, turned 21, by the time I turned 21, I wanted to start going to the bars and stuff. And that's where I got mixed up with my first husband. And that's kind of where this whole thing started.
I mean, not at all what you expect somebody with on your
Yeah.
trajectory, not at all like someone that you would think is going to go down that road of substance
Nope.
abuse. And
Mm-mm.
I'm so curious, and I think I a few years ago when Whitney Houston died, I
Mhm.
just loved her so much. I
Me too.
loved her voice, and everybody always blamed her ex-husband of getting her into the hard drugs. And then it was so beautiful, Kirsten. I saw her mother and her brother on an interview, something like 60 Minutes or something, within a year or two, and they clarified that. And I was grateful that they did. They are like, and her brother had a lot of shame and guilt because he said very explicitly that he was the one who introduced his sister, so he has to live with that the rest of his life, because we all know how that ended. And
Mhm.
feels a lot of guilt. And so, was it your ex-husband that introduced you, or like friends, or was there an incident where that made you say, "I think I'll try this"?
Well, I was already drinking. I met him at a bar, and he was pretty wild, but I was drinking. I was drinking and partying. And I was 21, and I was going to the bar with my friends, and it was fun. And I'd been raised in this very religious household, and I just wanted to party. So I met him, and from the get-go, though, I cannot blame this on him at all because I know better. My parents were like, do not get with him. Everybody in town was telling me, don't get with him. And he's passed away since. He was a really good guy, and I really loved him, but he had a drug problem. And I know nothing about meth at this point. And so I'm just in love with this guy. And he starts, spending the night. We're engaged, and he never sleeps. Like I roll over in the night, and he's wide awake. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? And pretty soon I take my first trip with him, and I just know nothing about meth, and I'm madly in love. And I don't know even how it came about, but he's like, hey, try this. And of course, and especially back then, meth is very addictive, and meth was keep you up for weeks at that point. And, you know, obviously it's addictive, and I got addicted to meth. But then I got pregnant. And the whole time I know better. I got pregnant with my daughter, and I was like, that's it, we're done, you know? And I was done and he wasn't, because I wasn't going to do, I'm smart enough to know you can't do that while you're pregnant. And I wasn't raised that way. I know better. You know, I know better. So I have the baby, he quits, everything's going well. Pretty soon he's off at it again. And then I have another baby. So now I have these two little girls, and David is just using drugs, doing all kinds of crazy things in the community. We own a business, it's very public. And so I take my kids and I go to my parents' house, and my parents' house was 4 hours away. And he kept calling and saying, I'm going to come down there. I'm going to come down there. He was just released from jail. You know, he's very volatile. He had me in some scary situations there with my kids where I was like, I need to get out of here. It wasn't going to end well. So I come to my parents, and he keeps calling like every 10 minutes. I'm going to come down there. And my dad's like, David, don't come down here. Well, he got to Phoenix, kept calling every 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden I just stopped hearing from him. And I was like, something is definitely seriously wrong. So I remember going outside that night, and I did love him, and I could feel it in my heart. He's the father of my children. I knew I was never going to see him again. So that Sunday, I get a call from DPS, and they said, Mrs. Bland, that was my last name, your vehicle was involved in a high-speed chase. And as soon as it left the pavement, we quit chasing them. And they said, but some people were riding four-wheelers, and they found your vehicle at the base of the Superstition Mountains, but there was nobody in it. And I know David, and I know how he is when he's on meth and how paranoid he is. So he had gotten out, walked away from that vehicle, left his cell phone. Back then, cell phones were like this huge bulky thing, and you couldn't really get any reception on them anyways. Never anything on his credit cards, never heard from him again. So obviously that's traumatic. I have these two little girls. And so it goes a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 18 months. He's just missing. And so you know, I just kind of got myself together. I think I tried to get on, not Prozac, it was something else at that time that was really popular. The name escapes me right now, but I did go to some therapy and get on some medication, but the medication wasn't doing it, you know? So I was kind of just frantic, but I settled in the best that I could. I got a little apartment, had my two little girls, I got a job, and I'm just like floating on autopilot. And I'll be places in town, and people will be talking about it, and I can hear them. And I'm like, one day in Safeway, a lady was talking about, you know, that Bland that owns that business, he's missing. And I'm standing right back there, and I'm just listening. Like, I don't speak up and be like, that's my husband, you know, because it's just very strange. And I knew he was never coming back. So it's called Gold's Canyon, where our vehicle was found. One day I walked into my dad's house, and he was going to give me money for half my utility bill. I was dropping my kids off before school. And he said, Kristen, come here, I need you to look at something. And so I went over there, and in the Arizona Republic, there's a little space called Valley and State. And it said skull of approximately 29-year-old male found at the base of Superstition Mountains. And I knew immediately that was him. So I get to work, and I knew. So it's just very strange how it happened. If my dad wouldn't have read that, and I think he knew, we would have never known. So I get to work, and I call the DPS officer in my town, and I tell him, hey, this is where my vehicle was. This is where David, you know, it says it's been there approximately a year. This is where David was. And this is a small town. They know him. So they said, all right, let us go check it out. And so I just kind of keep going on, you know, just autopilot like I had been. And 3 weeks later, I look up, and they're standing at the door of my office, and they were like, come here, Kristen. And they said, it is him. And instead of just going on like I had been, get hooked up with another guy, start doing meth, and have my little kids, you know. But immediately my dad was like, nah, this is not what you're going to do. So immediately I start getting in trouble. You know, I have a boyfriend that my house gets raided by the cops. I go to jail. He goes to jail. When they let me out, my dad had my kids, my dad and my older brother at my dad's house. And I went and picked him up, and my dad said, you're not taking your kids. And, you know, he shut the door right in my face, and they have these big doors that I could hear go click. I could hear it lock. And I was like, you can't keep my kids. So I call the sheriff. I come to my house and call the sheriff, and I tell him, my dad won't give me your kids. The sheriff comes to my house, and he's going to arrest me. He's going to arrest me just because, like, Kristen, leave your dad alone. Back then, I know people don't believe it. I literally got thrown in jail for a whole weekend one time because my dad told him to throw me in jail. This is real. You know what I mean? And I sat up there. I said, "Don't take me down there." I think they told me it was for missing some kind of counseling thing or whatever. But my dad, finally, they did bring my kids back over there. My dad was a superintendent at the high school, and somebody called Child Protective Services on me. And I was like, my house is clean, my kids are fed, you know. So they come to the door and they knock on the door and they said, Kristen, I'm from Child Protective Services. We went and spoke to Shelby at school today. And I said, no, you didn't. You didn't speak to my kid. Oh, yeah, we did. We're allowed to speak to your child. And I was so infuriated that somebody could actually have the power to speak to one of my kids. Right then, I was like, okay, I'm done.
I'm very sorry. I mean, it's very interesting and sad. Looking forward to
Yeah.
hearing about the recovery, but I have an older brother who he's 65 now, and I haven't talked to him in almost 5 years. And it's been
Hmm.
an up and down struggle with meth
Hmm.
for forever, for 30, 40 years. And
Hmm.
I was really touched when you said your husband was a good guy, because I think of my brother when he's
Yeah.
not on drugs, best big brother in the world, nothing but love and care for
Yeah.
his family. And then something happened, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I don't know. It seemed like he was doing something else. I don't know what
Hmm.
drugs, but it's very painful and sad because you watch someone's life like you, a really good person,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's the drugs that are affecting your brain. So you ended up spending, so now your dad's got the kids, your dad and mom, and then you
Hmm.
end up going to jail. Let's talk about that. And so, and I'm curious, did your dad and mom, did they get custody of the kids the whole time you were in jail?
No,
Oh, they did not.
I was only in jail this time for like a few days. The
Oh,
longest I'd ever done in jail at that point was a week. I was only in jail for a few days. And, you know, the goal here was not to take my kids away. My parents were just at their wits' end. The goal here was to get me to straighten up. And I think my dad finally figured out that a way like him threatening to take him from me wasn't going to do anything because I knew they were over there. So when he called CPS and they show up at my house, I knew I better straighten up. But I didn't stay straightened up because I just didn't. And when I people are like, oh, all drug addicts have severe trauma. My trauma all came later on, and my trauma pretty much was all self-inflicted. I do have a lot of deaths in my family, but about a year before David died, my little brother that I was very close to had died in a drunk driving accident. So I'm still reeling for that. And I go to jail and I get back, get my kids out. My boyfriend is still selling drugs. I let him come back, get arrested again. I'm in jail for a week. And at that point, I'm like, I've never been in jail for a week. And you know, I'm pretty spoiled and I don't like not with like a lot of money or whatever, but I come from a good family and I don't know about jail. You know, well, I do now. I know a lot about
God.
incarceration, but obviously I have mental health struggles. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm super hyperactive. Back then, my dad even said a while back, he said, I always just thought because you're super smart, you have a really high IQ, that was what was going on with you. I never knew that you were a little bit crazy. Back then, it was just hyperactivity. It wasn't, you know, but I was very much a bookworm. I was just a really good kid and always made really good grades. But, you know, my husband, he's like this saint. He's very calm and very laid back. And he did. He came right in and raised my little girls. Just and like I had a long term of sobriety at that point. But in my mid early 30s, I've always had a lot of problems with my neck, but I finally just got hooked in with the right doctor who was like, well, here's this, and here's that. He put me on hydrocodone at first and, you know, amitriptyline, which is an antidepressant that makes you feel really weird. He put me on gabapentin. He put me on Valium. So I'm just on all this medication. But to me, I knew I was addicted because when I would run out, I would get it somewhere else. But to me, that's legal, you know? So this is like 6 or 7 years. I'm just acting crazy on pain pills. I have a really good job, some really good friends that my family's all here, very close to my sister. And again, people are like, she's just a little crazy. She's always acted like that. She's a little hyperactive, you know? And I think I hid it well for a really long time. But, you know, in my late 30s, I just started having like real severe mental health problems. So I want to get off pain pills. Getting off Valium was horrible. Getting off the pain pills took about 4 days. I knew nothing about benzos. I knew nothing about benzodiazepines. So when I started withdrawing off the Valium, it was very, very severe. It's It's one of the only withdrawals you can actually die from, that and alcohol. And this guy's an alcoholic. And so he kept telling me, just take a little shot of this vodka, take a shot of vodka. And I told him, I will end up a raging alcoholic. I know I will. But I was so sick and the withdrawals were so bad that I started doing that. And within 2 months, I was a raging alcoholic. So I left my husband in January of 2015. By February of 2017, I was going to prison over alcohol. I mean, I burnt my whole life down over alcohol. So meth was the least of my problems.
So now you end up going to prison because of the alcohol and the DUIs, and
Mhm.
now you're in prison. Let's talk about those 5 years and how you dealt with that, because personally, I've never been to jail. I
Okay,
think it would be the worst thing in the world being locked in a cage. I'd almost think like
don't go.
death would be better, but unless I knew it was a temporary thing. If I thought like some of these people that are sentenced to life, like I'd rather die. But and how did you stay how let's talk about that, because and then you briefly mentioned that you did grow up with faith. I was curious if you had been brought up with faith, and if not, like where are you now?
Yeah.
Is that what got you through? Let's talk about those 5 years in jail.
But the charges that I initially went to prison for is I had a gun. I had two guns actually, and I had meth on me. And I was drunk, but I had been drinking. I wasn't drinking when I was driving, but I had somebody in my car. I was just doing all kinds of risky, crazy things. But that was the life I was living at that point. People can't believe it when I say that, but it's true. And my parents knew it. My husband knew it. Everybody knew it. So, but I did bond out and get a DUI. So I get out and I'm going to go to prison in a few weeks. So my husband does come for Thanksgiving. A few days before I go, he comes and picks me up from my sisters, and oh, this makes me emotional. He said, I want to take you home so we can have Thanksgiving for our kids. And this is on, so Thanksgiving's obviously on a Thursday. So he picks me up on a Friday. I go have Thanksgiving on my kids. Monday, I've got to turn myself in and go to prison for 5 years, you know? So I did not want any of my family to go to court with me because I had flat time. There was no chance of them giving me any other sentence. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to prison. And I did not want anyone in my family to watch that. So I had a friend take me. And so I go to prison and, I'm still on this pink cloud from rehab. But I am waiting for these other charges to happen. And so I don't have any phone privileges or anything. And I'm sick. So when you check into prison, when you go, they do all these tests and everything for you. And the day I find out I have cancer. So I find out I have cancer in prison. The same day I find out I have cancer, I have a meeting with the prosecutor on the phone, not the prosecutor, the pretrial guy, and I find out I'm getting 7 more years in prison. So I just want to jump off the top bunk at that point, but I don't have phone privileges. So I'm writing my brother and sister back and like, hey, this is what's happening. They're just going to roll me up and bring me back to court at some point. And finally, my brother said, no, this isn't what we're going to do. Again, you're going to be positive. And you're going to deal with the fact that if you get 7 more years, you get 7 more years, but we're not even going to talk about that. And my sister starts gathering letters for me. And what I'm going through at this point is crazy because I'm waiting days to get a letter back because I haven't been there long enough to have phone privileges. So when the prosecutor got up, he said, yeah, Your Honor, she has a lot of drug charges. She's a career drug offender, whatever, you know what I mean? She's this has been her, which is wrong because I had a long length of sobriety, but I have had numerous felonies in my life. I haven't been convicted of them all, but I have been charged throughout my life with 19 felonies. Like, that's crazy. Like, how does that happen? Like, I'm literally a train wreck, and this is with all those years of sobriety. So my brother gets up and he says, Judge Peterson, I believe my sister should be in prison. She absolutely needs to be in prison, but not for the 7 years. The 5, yeah, not for 7 more. He said there's a quote by Viktor Frankl that says, what is to give light must endure burning. He said, my sister's done some burning, but she has a lot of light to give other people. And I was like, dang, that's good. And they came and handed me these character letters, and I'm reading this huge stack of letters from all these people that were like, Kristen was kind to me. Kristen is the kind of person that would give you $1 if you needed it. Kristen coached my kids in basketball. Kristen started her own business. And it kind of made me remember, like, before I was so tore up, and addicted to drugs and alcohol. And they handed the judge those letters and he goes, let me take a short recess. So he goes back and he reads the letters and he comes out. And I have a long history with this judge. 20 years ago, he was my lawyer. So he comes out and he said, Kristen, and he looked right at me. He said, I'm going to do something that's make me not going to make me very popular today. And I was like, oh no, my whole family's right here. And he said, I don't know what it is. He said, but I believe you. Because I told him I'm going to go back into jails. I'm going to go back into prisons. I want to help people, and he said, that was very well written. He said, Kristen, if I ever see you in front of me again, I will give you 15 years in prison. And like you could feel the air coming out of the courtroom, just like my whole family, just like, so I get back to prison. I just get really active in recovery. I start doing school. I mean, at this point, I still have 4.5 years left. I start repairing some relationships. Eventually, my husband starts coming back and we work through that. He's bringing my grandkids to see me. I always had a job where I worked off site.
Oh,
Yeah, I just really,
I didn't know that
mhm.
was a thing. I did not know that was a thing. Okay.
Yeah, you have to be on a minimum yard. But I'm a little bit older, and people would always say, aren't you scared to go to prison? And I know I don't look like it, but I'm not scared. I've never been scared of anything. And it really depends in prison on how you carry yourself, if you're respectful, if other people think they should respect you. Plus, I was a little bit older, but I'm tough. Like, I don't mean like I'm strong, like I can adapt to any situation. You can't go to prison and hang your head down. You have to be, you have to. I've always had good self-confidence, so, and unless I was in the midst of my addiction, and I just walked into prison with the thought of it, whether it was accurate or not. I'm not scared of anybody, and nobody is going to mess with me. I've always taken that stance on my children. I've always thought I'm going to stick up for myself, and it just prison is a sad place, and prison is hard, but prison is doable. You choose how to do your time. It just becomes your life. I'm telling you, there's been a few times since I've been out of prison where I've been like, oh my gosh, life is hard. Prison is easy. And I'm not kidding. Prison is easy compared to real life. When I first got out, everything that would happen to me, I would feel inside like crazy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's because I just got out of prison. No, I've been out 2 years now. And no, that's just how life is. Life is hard. You know what I mean? I didn't just get out of prison. You have bills. And one of the tough things for me was like technology, though, from life and technology. So from 2015 till the end of 2023, being away from computers and cell phones and all that, I didn't know what a QR code was. I had a meltdown of Social Security because they wanted me to scan one. I didn't know what it was. I just got out of prison. I couldn't open an iPhone. I left out of there in tears, and I didn't drive for like, I think 8 months because I'd been in a couple of accidents and I just wasn't ready. I had to rely on rides. I just didn't drive. I didn't feel comfortable. I was still really nervous. And the first time I do drive and I see a white car, I pull over and I want my husband to pick me up. It's hard coming out of prison and getting back into real life. And I have a friend that just got out, and I told her, I said, I never thought I would miss prison. I said, but sometimes I would want to talk to you, or sometimes like when so in prison, when you're watching American Idol and there's like bed, 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 bed. And, we'd be laying there, and as soon as it's over, you can sit up and literally lean your head over. And these are girls I lived around for 2 years. Did you like that? Did you think that was good? And turn over this way and talk to the next girl, and you become a family, and you miss that. You miss that. And I told her, man, I used to miss just being able to sit up and talk to you whenever I could. So I do go back into the prisons. I spend more time in prison now than I do out, but I was on a max yard the other day, and it's really sad because the girls there, a lot of them are never getting out. And they've committed crimes like they shouldn't get out, or some of them have been in a car where somebody committed a crime and somebody got shot, so they've been in there since they were 18. But these girls are positive, and they're out there dancing with us, and they're doing the best they can. But then there's a couple that while we're there are on drugs and are falling down and getting taken out in cuffs and stuff like that. And that's the harsh reality of prison, but that's the harsh reality of life. If you want to do drugs and you don't want to change, you're not going to. And earlier in the day, both these girls have been talking to me, and they're really cute girls, and they're young, and it's really sad. Like, how do you get arrested in prison? Well, you can, and they did. They got taken off in cuffs, and it's just really sad because those two are going to get out, and that's going to be their life probably. But that all comes, I feel like, from trauma, not dealing with your trauma.
what kind of resources are available for people for help? So you don't come out
Well,
and we go back to the same behavior or addictions.
you know, there's not a lot. I mean, yeah, there's medical there, and I don't want to talk bad about the Department of Corrections because they really are trying to do things, but the medical care is very lacking. I had a broken femur for a month, and I couldn't walk, and we were out of ibuprofen. The doctors didn't have ibuprofen. I was in a wheelchair for a solid month before I could even get to a doctor, and they rushed me right into surgery. Um, the healthcare is lacking. There is, not so much counseling, but you can get on psych meds. But the counseling doesn't really come along with it. And then a lot of times the medication that's prescribed, it's overprescribed and it's heavily abused. Like girls sell it to other girls. The recovery in prison, though, is the most meaningful and powerful programs in prison are inmate ran. Like I ran the whole yard, my whole yard. I ran all of the AA. I had a program called the Way Out, and there's a little group of us on every yard. But there is people that come in from the outside, and one of them's name is June Badiata, and she came in, and she's come in for 13 years, and she would bring us. It was an HA meeting, but it's like AA, it's Heroin's Anonymous. But you go to whatever 12-step meeting you can. And she showed up for us every 2 weeks. She came and right till the time I got out. And it's really awesome. When I'd been out of prison for 1 year, she came down to my party. And when I got broke ground for the women's sober living home, she was here, and she's just like changed so many lives, and I don't think she realizes it. And sometimes she doesn't have the money to drive an hour from her house and do all that. But
Could you say her name
so
again?
June Badiata,
Okay, what was her background? How did she start coming to the women's jails?
she's been incarcerated before in California, and she has terrible addiction problems. And that's if you're a part of AA in that's part of being of service. Like that's what keeps you sober is they say you can't keep what you have unless you're giving it away. And it's freely given to you, and you need to give it to everybody else. So here's the problem: a lot of people go to AA and they think they feel better, so they think they are better, or any kind of recovery. So pretty soon they outgrow it and they're like, oh, I don't need this. Well, they forget that the same way they got better was by people helping them and with support. And then they just go off, and you've got to keep that going, even just with the universe. But for recovery, it's hard to do it on your own. But they did one day at a graduation, a second chance graduation, a girl I'd been in prison with that I was very close with was there. She had in plain clothes, and I walked over to her and I was like, I'm so happy to see you. I said, how did you get back in here? And she said, it can be done. And that day I decided I'm going to come back in here. So I get to the second chance program, and it's such a great program. First time in prison, I have access to a computer and email. So I've known the director of the Graham County Substance Coalition forever. She's amazing. So I know her, and I have a meeting one day, a virtual meeting with the reentry coordinator in Graham County. And she's talking to a bunch of us, and she says, I have resources, I can help you. I'm going to reach out to you on your tablet. And she reaches out to me one time, and I have a few weeks before I'm getting out of prison, and I never hear from her again. So I try to reach out to her when I get out, and I never hear from her again. But while I'm in prison, I email Kathy Grimes, who's the director. I just look up the Substance Abuse Coalition. I email her and I said, listen, when I get out, I want to start a strong reentry program there. And she's like, we have a reentry coordinator. And in my mind, I'm like, well, she's not helping me at all. And so I hadn't even been out of prison a year, and I'm the reentry coordinator. The same judge that I said was going to give me 15 years, I'd been out 9 months, and the judge, the jailer, the sheriff, they approached us and said, we want to start a reentry program for people that have been people that have been arrested on minor drug or paraphernalia charges. We want to quit sending people to prison. And we need some kind of program. We need to come up with some kind of program, and this and that. And I do have an education. I am actually highly intelligent. I just make horrible life choices sometimes. But I'm a behavioral health technician. I'm a recovery sports specialist, a forensic recovery sports specialist. So, and I've always been like made very good grades, very book smart. And so, but my life experience is what matters. And so I just start getting this idea of what I want to do. And So I've been out of prison 9 months, and we got a building donated to us, and we got a grant to fix it up. And I've already had this program going for a few months. It's called the Sunrise Program, and it's very successful. And I just show a lot of support and connection. I picked them up from jail, and one of them's like, "Are you my probation officer?" I said, "No, I'm tripping out. I just got out of prison. I have a probation officer. I don't want to be at the jail. Get in my car, you know?" So we come back to the reentry center. But when they have the ribbon cutting here, um, I give the judge gives a speech, the county prosecutor gives a speech, I think, and the sheriff, who's actually raided my house a lot of times, he's always been a good friend though. And when it's time to cut the ribbons, I'm walking up there and they hand me the scissors, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "No, this is your deal. Cut it." And I don't want people to think that it's just this miracle program where everybody makes it and no, not everybody leaves and nobody goes back to jail, because it's not. This is addiction, you know, this is incarceration. We do lose people back to jail. We've lost people to overdose. Those people don't live here though, and you don't have to come here. But there are people in my program that even the judges told me, "I never thought this person would get sober."
What
I
kind
have
of things when you go to the jail? So are you helping these people, these women, as a reentry coordinator? Do you help them like find a place to live, resume skills? Like what are you doing all day long? You going to the jails? What are your responsibilities?
so I work with men too.
Oh, I didn't even think of
So
that. I guess.
the Sunrise program operates completely on support and connection. Like, I believe in a holistic approach to recovery and reentry. Last night we had a sound bath. We do guided meditations. We also do budgeting things. We have people come in and speak to us. The girls at the Caring Hearts just took a cooking class. But
Oh,
in DOC, I send out probably 30 flyers. So I get a list every 6 months of who's paroling to my county. So I send out these flyers. These people are vetted though. You can't have certain crimes and be in my program. You can't. I look you up. If you have fighting tickets up till the day you left, you're not a good candidate, because I don't, because you have already shown the capacity to not be able to change at that point. If you get out and come, that's okay. But so if I send 30 out, I get two back. And out of those two, one successful. I'm throwing numbers out. I'm not being, but the two that I do get back and they come live at one of the sober living homes, the ones that take the time to do the work in prison, to work with me, to set goals, we have a plan when they get out. I can help them get work boots. They get a cell phone and a phone card. They get underwear. People ask me all the time, "Who's giving you the money to do this? How do you do this? How did you? Who gives you your cell phones?" The fact that I have been incarcerated, I know what you need when you get out. You know, it's been trial and error. So we were like completely on grants and donations. But when we go to write those grants, I know what we need. I know when you get out, you don't have $75 for the first week at your sober living. And if you're getting out into my county, you're going to be supported more than you've ever been supported, but you are also going to be challenged. You are going to be challenged um, by me and by everybody else in the program.
well, I think there's nobody better than to help someone who's lived it. Certainly someone, I
Right.
strongly feel that you're much more effective than I would ever be helping somebody. I can have a PhD and blah 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 from the best school in
Yeah.
the country, and if I haven't
Hmm?
don't have any lived experience, I think
Good.
it's better. But I do want to hear about, because I heard you on another podcast. You have I'd like to hear about your current projects and anything still left on your list. And you have a newsletter, I think it called what,
Yeah.
The Light. Let's hear about
The
that.
light.
That sounded amazing. How you started it, and is it emailed to people around the country, your county? Let's hear about the Light newsletter. It sounds great.
When I get out, Kathy Grimes, the director, comes to my house, and I've been out like 6 days and I'm totally weird. I'm like, have so much adrenaline. I'm shaking. I can't think straight. And I told her, I said, I really wanted to make this newsletter. I said, and my brother helped me format this thing. I said, but I'm going to take it and get it printed and send it in to the girls. And that's my first goal. And it was very basic at that point. So she said, let me see it. Let me look at it. And she said, "Huh, this is really good. And she said, "I think we can do something with this." But my brother that helped me do it, my brother and sister-in-law, he is the one that got up at my sentencing and said, "What is to give light must endure burning." And that stuck with me my whole sentence. And so I talked about it to them all the time. He sent me the book, And he said, what do you want to name this newsletter? And I said, I want to name it The Light. Yes. Sometimes so I got out on October 19th. On November 14th, I sent in the first issues of The Light to Perryville. I sent in 40, I think 30 or 40 to them. And then I sent in a couple to Phoenix West prison, the guys I knew at Phoenix West. And
so it's mailed physically, not email, because I don't know if women in prison have access to email. So do you physically mail them something, or are they doing this on a computer?
so it's mailed physically. And I've always wanted to keep it that way because it's so organic to get mail in prison, because you hardly don't, because there's tablets now, to be able to open it up and look at it, and hold it in your hand. That's just, it's something that, yeah, you love, Well, but the guys, and I found this out later, the guys are like, they copy off all their, so it's in color, they copy off all their mail because of the drugs that come in. And so they just get it in black and white. So I've worked my way around that. But at first I'm just making like 60, then it starts growing. And then I start going back into speaking at prisons. I'm very much on social media. I don't really know how it happens exactly. I mean, I have worked hard, but the light just takes off, and now it becomes this movement, and it becomes this crazy thing, and
A lot of things
it's just,
yeah.
yeah, everybody knows about it. And now it goes into prisons all over the United States and a lot of rehabs. The thing is going to start happening, though, is there is going to end up being no paper mail in prisons. It's all eventually going to go to the tablet. So even though I love the sending it in, and I will send it in to the women and whoever wants to, as long as I can get it. But like in Texas, all their mail goes somewhere and gets scanned into a tablet anyways. So it's all on a tablet. So I get asked to be on this podcast several months ago. His name's Noah Asher, and I'm on his podcast, and he's like, hey, your podcast is going to drop into the tablets on the prison. And he said, I'm going to start this network. Love for you to be a part of it. I said, I really want to get the light on the tablet so everybody has access to it. And so he did get all of his stuff together, and the launch is just about to happen. And it's only going to start out as one page, but I have a blog that's coming out called The Light that's just going to be one page once a week. So it could be the full newsletter, and it's going to drop into 1 million prison tablets. So all over the United States.
Right, so everybody in jail, they have access to a tablet, and they won't even, I think I heard you say that no more physical mail. That's where they're moving towards.
That's what they are moving towards eventually, because most of the drugs and contraband that come into prisons come in the mail.
Oh, I didn't know that. Your newsletter just sounds anything that could uplift someone in their darkest days. Let's kind of like wind down. We have a few more minutes.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear like what your current projects are, or I get, it sounds like this is one of the big ones, The Light. If this can be, do you write all the material, or do you have contributing editors at this point? Because it sounds like a lot of work.
Oh, it is a lot of work. I was working on it today. When I got out, it was so mind blowing to me, and I would be so stressed out. I've learned how to work with it really well. I do have a friend named Blake Matthews who usually writes the third page, or has. It's gotten to where I'm making so many of them. I always try to feature somebody, and I used to interview them and all this. Now I'm like, can you write me something about what you've done since you've been out of prison? And kind of just like what me and you did here, like the questions, or write. And then I format it and put it in there. But a lot of it, I do author the whole thing. And the thing that is most exciting in my life right now is something called the Light Project. The Light Project is a proposal I made to the Arizona Department of Corrections, and it's based on the 8 dimensions of wellness. So it hasn't gone all the way through. What it's going to be is a 12-week program. And, I'll do it for 12 weeks at Fort Grant. And then when it's done and they graduate, I'll go to the other Stafford prison. But so what I'm doing right now is it's a holistic approach to reentry and recovery. So we take the sound bowls in there, and I do breathing treatments, and I do a journaling workshop with them. And the first time I ever did a sound bath with the guys, you see all these guys walking in, and a lot of them have face tattoos, and a lot of them they're all getting ready to get out pretty soon, And I'm just like, yeah, they're going to hate this. They love it. They love it. They say that massaged my brain, but I had a really cool experience the other day. A Native American man, he said, I can speak. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, I can speak again. He said, I could speak. He said, but the words I wanted to say were trapped here in my mouth, in my throat. and we had done a chakra clearing, and oh, it's just so awesome. We want to do art therapy with them.
Well,
It's awesome.
one thing that I've read about and talked to different, over the last couple of years of doing this podcast, whenever they've introduced the meditation in prisons and
Mhm,
jails and even
mhm,
schools in lieu of detention, anybody that's
mhm,
incorporated, the results are like night and day as far as
mhm.
reticism, the fighting in jails. To me, it's completely fascinating learning how to calm the mind, have these tools. Some of these people have never been exposed to it. Like, people on the outside, or if you're in this, I'm in the wellness field as a chiropractor, so sound baths,
Mhm.
everyday lingo, but someone who's never done this. But all of these tools, meditation. Next week, I'm chatting with a senator in Hawaii. We just connected on LinkedIn. He's doing all these great things for the state of Hawaii. But one of the things he posted about last week that he introduced, I want to learn more, is like kittens in jail for the men's
Yeah.
prison. I never heard of that, but that sounds like amazing.
I am
Yeah.
involved in something called Convicted Comeback that I do with girls that I was incarcerated with. We go back in once a month and we work out with all the girls on every unit. And it's crazy because they didn't used to let people come back in that had been incarcerated. When I was in prison, you would have never seen this. So that is Arizona in that way is reimagining corrections. But I've been looking, so the recidivism rate in Arizona is 39%. The
Mm.
recidivism rate for people that have done community partners like what we do, that have done these classes like second chance and worked with community partners such as the Light Project and Convicted Comeback, the recidivism rate is 17%. So what we're doing is working. It's working, and that's what we want, right? We want these people to get out. They're going to live it by us. They're going to live by our moms. They're going to be in society, so why not help them?
I'm gonna promote you everywhere. Beautiful. What would you like? No, I mean, the more I'm just a small little podcast. We're trying to pitch this as a TV show. We had a couple pitches a couple years ago, but what would you like? The more exposure you get, whether it's a little podcast like me or a local news channel, maybe one day 60 Minutes. I mean, when you hear those
Yeah.
stats, those kinds of stats, when red is it when you can, look these programs. I'm like I said, we started this discussion. I mentioned I had just seen on this morning the Yale program for these incarcerated men.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind that giving people tools, especially employment schools, will change things too. Being able to
Hmm. Hmm.
and all of the feelings. This show is all about mental health. So let's wind down. Like what I'd love to hear where it sounds like you're in a really good place now. It sounds like you had mentioned that you're married and gee, what are your
I
hobbies and
am.
interests when you're not dealing with the whole prison and reentry? You have to take a break sometimes. How do you spend your free time?
I love to work out and exercise. I'm becoming a personal trainer right now. That's one thing that the girls and I in Convicted Comeback are really aligned. And that's one thing Kristen Klein and I, one of my friends that we used to play volleyball, we used to work out. And um, some people say you've traded one addiction for another. Guess what? Like being exercising has never landed me in prison, so that's fine. I love to exercise. My husband's about to retire pretty soon, and it is my hobby is to go down and do exercise classes, and being physically fit is very important to me, and that is how I deal with my mental health. I run bleachers all summer long and really push myself. Not, and I know when to give my body some time off, but my mental health is better because I exercise. I don't, and the sound baths, and you know, what I do, this is what I do in my spare time. This sunrise program is like my heart. So there's these people and we support each other and we're connected. And I told them last night, we're all authentic with each other, and that authenticity connects us. And then that's how we heal. There's just this connection. And I have little grandkids that, I take them to Great Wolf Lodge and stuff like that. And so I'm just able to be with my family. I prayed every day when I was in prison for my parents to be alive. So I spend a lot of time with my parents. They're in their 80s. And yeah, spend a lot of time with my brother and sister. You go to prison and the people that stick by you are your family. I have the most amazing family. I love my family so much, and my husband and my kids and my brother and sister. It's just amazing.
Well, you know, I I feel the same. I can't
Mhm,
imagine. I do see a lot of people walk away, especially addiction is
mhm,
so brutal.
mhm.
Many family members walk away forever and say, I just don't want that. I cannot deal with that. And there have been moments I have felt like that with my, I haven't, yeah, it's been like 5 years since I've talked to my older brother, but it just got so
Yeah.
but I pray for him and I think about him like
Yeah.
every day. I miss that because we were
Yeah.
like you and your siblings and my younger brother,
Mhm,
he's just sick with mental illness, so we don't talk very
mhm.
much. But they're on my mind and I would never, I want to be there for them. And, that support, that unconditional love that our pets give us, you know?
Yes, and the thing with me, my siblings and I, we've lost two brothers. We've lost two brothers to addiction. My sister lost her oldest son to addiction. I lost my first husband to addiction. And that's just something that my brother said at my little brother said at my older brother's funeral, I will not lose another sibling. And so, we are very supportive of one another. My brother and sister are my best friends.
All right. Beautiful. Well, beautiful
Mhm.
sentiments to end with.
Yeah.
We are just a few weeks away from Thanksgiving and Christmas family time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you so much for coming, taking
Mhm.
the time, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you. I love everything that
Yes.
you're doing.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you for
Happy,
having me.
thank you and happy Thanksgiving in here in a few weeks. Bye, Kristen.
You too. All right. Bye bye.